Hello, it's Tracy Kiernan, and this acrylic painting tutorial is going to show you how to paint warm wishes with acrylics on an 11 by 14 inch canvas. So this is one of those paintings that it can work as a couples painting or side by side partner painting. You would just cut the design in half and you would do one on one side, one on the other. I'm only going to paint it on one canvas. That's how I'm going to demonstrate it, but it does work like that. You could even push the snowman over a little bit so they're not right on the edge of the canvas. That's just an idea if you want to do it that way. Let's go over brushes and colors. So the good news is there's only two brushes for this. The 1 inch flat or 3/4 flat, you can use either or, and the number 4 round brush. And then we'll need a pencil and ruler and eraser for this. Very, very basic drawing for this. There's an optional traceable template if you want to use that, but I won't be using the tracer. I'll be showing you how to draw the snowman. And then optional toothbrush. This is fun. You can splatter little snow dots all over your canvas. There are 8 colors for this. You can simplify the color palette a little bit, I think, but I'm going to use 8 colors. Hooker's Green Hue, Titanium White, Cerulean Blue, Cadmium Red Medium Hue, Mars Black, Burnt Umber, Phthalo Blue, and Cad Orange Hue. So if you want to simplify the color palette, you can probably take out one of the blues, either the dark blue or the light blue. Maybe leave the dark blue, so take out the cerulean blue, and then to make that into like a lighter blue when you need it, you can mix the darker blue with the white, so you can do that. You could eliminate some of the secondary colors, so if you want, you can just do yellow, and then you can make your green by mixing yellow and blue. You can make your orange by mixing yellow and orange. So you can eliminate the green and the orange, and that simplifies it a little bit. Let's go ahead and get started. So I'm working on just one 11 by 14 canvas, and I am going to start by measuring 4 inches. So I have my canvas placed horizontally, and I want to mark 4 inches. So if you're doing different size canvas, it's about 1/3. And to be honest, this measurement does not have to be exact. You can just estimate it just a little bit less than halfway. We want more sky than ground. And then you're going to take this and dip it down. So this is going to allow our sky to be kind of inverted a little bit and give us kind of a more advanced landscape that's not super going flat across. And then let's load our paint palette with Phthalo Blue, Cerulean Blue, and Titanium White. And I'm going to start with the 1 inch flat brush. So load your brush in the water, tap it dry. And like I said, you can use the 3/4 flat if you want. I just happen to grab the 1 inch flat. You don't want too much. Load that into your dark blue and start at the top. So these, I call them different things. Sometimes I say they're expressive paint strokes. Sometimes I say they're angle or X paint strokes. We just want kind of this choppy texture in the sky. And if you want to simplify it, you can just do straight left and right paint strokes. Go down a few inches with that dark, and then load your brush with the Cerulean Blue. These are very similar colors, but the Phthalo Blue is slightly darker. You want to take that cerulean, blend it up into your dark blue, bring it down a little bit, but look how I'm making this kind of arc in the sky. A little bit higher in the middle, lower on the sides. Without rinsing the brush, grab your white. Now, as you're loading these colors, you may find that you need to wipe the brush because they're kind of overloaded. So if your brush was overloaded, you could wipe the brush and then grab your white. But do the same thing, grab your white and blend that with your cerulean blue. We are trying to make this choppy, textured, snowy sky right now. That is darker at the top and lighter at the bottom. We're going to bring this light color all the way down to our horizon line. That's that curved line we drew. And we're not going to go below that line. If you go up like this and blend some of this upper part, just be careful not to add too much white up here because we still want it to kind of look like it's dark at the top and light at the bottom. I'm going to wipe my brush and load it in just the white and then go in here. So I know this is opposite of what we're doing. It's not choppy, but I want to do that so I can cut in and get as close to the line as possible. And then I can go back and kind of do that texture thing along the edges. If we end up going over that line a little bit, that's fine. I'm going to wipe the brush off again. This time I'm going to use the palette to wipe the brush. Towel works too. Grab the dark, and I want to add just a little bit more dark over here at the top. It might have even been better if I rinsed the brush to start over because I'm still getting some of this light color in there. But just a little bit extra dark at the top to really make it look like it is dark to light. Just dragging it down a little bit without bringing too much of that dark down in the middle. Maybe a little bit on the sides, but not in the very center of the sky. And the reason for that is because of the snow people. They're going to have kind of a brighter back to in the sky, and kind of that brightness is going to help them to stand out a little bit better. Sometimes I'll do that with my backgrounds. I'll make sure that my main objects will have a brighter part of the background around it, and that really helps things to pop later on. Next, we're going to do Mars Black Titanium White. We're going to paint the snow area. So we're going to do kind of a gray color snow instead of blue because we have a lot of blue in the sky. So we're going to do gray for the snow. I'm going to rinse, get all that rinsed and dry. And we're going to do smooth paint strokes using the full width of the brush. And we're going to start with titanium white. And you want to do this step before your sky dries because we're actually going to blend some of this into the sky to make it look like that land just kind of disappears into the sky. So I'm going to take this white, go over my line, and bring it up just slightly above our line and let that blend with your light blue in the sky. So we want this snowy land area, horizon area to just blend into sky so it disappears. We don't see where that line stops or ends at this point. It just disappears into the rest of the sky. So that's a fun thing we can do to create depth in our snowy landscape. And then I'm going to bring this down. So the rest of this, we're doing smooth paint strokes left and right, kind of in that curved direction that we drew that line, the kind of that inverted curve where it curves down in the middle, slightly upwards on the left and right. Grab a little black on your corner, mix it on your palette just to double check. It shouldn't be too dark. It should be kind of a medium gray color. If it's too dark, it's going to be hard to get this to blend lighter. So only a little bit of black on the corner of your brush is all you need. And then very smooth paint strokes that curve. So we want a snowy area that is dark on the bottom and it blends to bright white in the middle, very, very bright white in the horizon, and then it disappears into the rest of the sky. We are done with our big flat brush right now. I'm going to rinse, set that to the side, and I'm going to use a toothbrush next to splatter. So I like to get the brush wet, apply the paint, and test it out first so it's not too thick and not too thin. And then splatter it We have a few thick pieces in this, but that's okay. It's a snow painting, so if we have thick pieces, it'll makes it more fun. Oh, another thick piece. And then just flick it all over. And then you want everything to dry before going on to the next step, especially if you have some thick snow pieces. It might take a little bit of time to dry because you don't want it to kind of smear with what we're going to do next. So we're going to paint the pine trees next. I'm going to use the color Hooker's Green Hue and the number 4 round brush. So load that into the green, and actually I'm going to mix a little bit of black into my green just to darken it. So I'm just taking little bits of black, blending it into the green. I'd say maybe about 1 part black to 3 parts green. However, that doesn't have to be exact. Figure out what the top of the tree is going to be, and then paint little curved paint strokes that go down. So I like to brush each branch starting from the top and brushing down and out. Sometimes I'll do it with the second tree, but it might be helpful to do like a vertical line down the middle first and then do it, or even paint a triangle shape first and then do your branches over the triangles. That helps you form the tree. And as you work your way down, you're just brushing your branches down and your tree is getting whiter as you work your way down. I'm finding myself, I need to add just a teeny bit of water into that paint to make sure all these brush strokes are flowing the way I want them to. It's easier than if I didn't add a little bit of water in there. Brush it down, decide where the bottom of your tree is going to be, and then stop. So these trees are kind of in the distance, so I'm not going to go too far down with them. Next, I'm going to do the same thing on the right. They do not have to be the exact mirror image of each other. They can be different. So I'm going to make this one, I'm going to do the line thing that I talked about earlier. I'm going to do a vertical line and go down to where I want to stop. So this one's going to be slightly taller, and I'm going to make it slightly thinner. But start at the top and brush down and out each of your branch paint strokes. You can always go back and kind of make it wider if you want. A little bit of water helps get that flow of those branches. Twisting the brush also, when you roll the brush, you load that paint right there on the end of the bristles. It also gathers those bristles together for ease of control of your paint stroke. I am making these branches just slightly darker as well. And bring this all the way down. I didn't do tree trunks, but if you want to have like brown, make a little brown tree trunk on the bottom of these, you're welcome to do that. I'm going to go back and touch up this one. So we are going to do a snow layer on these trees, but we're not going to do that until all of those dry. So we are going to move on to the next step. I'm going to rinse my 4 round brush and set it to the side, and we need a ruler and pencil next. So I am not going to draw all the detail work for the snow people. I'm actually going to only draw the circles and then we'll paint them in. It makes things a little bit easier and less drawing as well. But you need to, so if you just use a pencil and start drawing your circles, it might be kind of hard to determine the positioning because we want the snow people to be in the center, but also we want to make it so their mugs line up so it looks like that their cups are touching. So we can guess, but I found it easier actually to take a ruler and find the center of your painting. So this is a 14-inch wide canvas painting. So depending on if you're doing 20 inches wide, you would find 10. So this is 7 inches in the center. And do a vertical line down the center. So we'll erase this line later. So don't make this line too dark. Just make it light enough to where you can see. So you find your center. Of course, this is different if you're working with a partner and you're both doing it on a different canvas. You wouldn't be drawing this line. You'd be potentially lining your canvases up together. I'm going to erase this first circle that I tried to do. And so that center is where the mugs need to be meeting. So then we can kind of guess where the bottom, I'm going to do the 3 snowballs. So starting with the bottom one, and the width apart. So here's this one and here's this one. They need to be about a finger width apart. So like that. So you should have about a finger width apart between both of those bottom circles. And they're actually not circles, they're more like ovals. So they're a little bit flatter on the bottom and the top. And then you do your next set of ovals, and they need to slightly overlap. So they don't rest directly on the other, they slightly overlap. And I'm trying to make them pretty mirror imaged, although if there's some variation in the size or shape, that's fine because they're 2 different snow people. And then the top one I found is more like a circle, and that one slightly overlaps. And the height, so the top of this circle reaches to only about the center part of the sky, and the bottom part of the circle, I forgot to mention, that reaches to about the center part of the landscape area. I'm going to draw the mugs, but you do not need to draw the mugs. In fact, I'm going to end up erasing them, but I want to show you how this is going to look. So we have, these are just the basic mugs. The handle, if it ends up overlapping parts of the snowman, that's fine. And then the arms are going to go like this. So just make sure you gave yourself enough room. And I'm going to erase these anyway. Just make sure you gave yourself enough room in that center part for the mugs. Erase all this, and for the drawing we only need the circles and that line down the middle, and we are going to move along and start painting things in. So once you have all of that figured out, we're going to paint our first layer of our snow people, and this is going to be a not white snowball. We're going to start with gray, kind of a medium gray. So on my paint palette, I am mixing, let's do about 3 parts white to 1 part black. I'm going to slightly water it down so it makes this kind of medium gray color. And this is going to help it to show up against our snow background. I'm going to take the number 4 round brush, and I'm going to paint each of the snowballs. I'm going to start at the bottom and then work my way to the top. So outline your shape and then fill it in. So this is kind of flat on the bottom instead of rounded on the bottom where it hits the ground. I'm actually loading my brush with a little bit more white right there just to kind of lighten that a little bit for a little bit of color variation. I don't want pure white at all right now. I want my first layer to be dark so that when this dries I can layer on my lighter color, and that's going to give me more of that 3-dimensional look for my snow person. So I'm going to do the same thing for the next one. So this snowball is overlapping that first one. Same colors, but we should be able to kind of see the edge of that circle based on the way we did that paint stroke. If you want, you can kind of make a lighter or darker color in there to kind of distinguish that edge. And then your top snowball is also gray, and it slightly overlaps the middle one. So you kind of outline your shape, fill it in with paint strokes that kind of go in a circular direction until you get to the center. So you see how there's a little bit of color variation in there, and that's just from loading my brush and sometimes darker, sometimes lighter, and letting it blend on the canvas. We're going to do the same thing to the left snowman. So start on the bottom, and then bottom snowball is a little bit flat, a little bit of color variation. So I grabbed some white without it being too bright white. It's just a kind of a lighter version of that gray, just to kind of blend what's going on there. This one overlaps. So that one I kind of made lighter as it overlapped that slightly darker one, just to get that to kind of stand out. And then your top circle overlaps the middle circle. And you're allowed to adjust your drawing. Those pencil lines will erase as long as we don't paint over them. If you paint over them, you shouldn't see the pencil line anymore. So the parts that are still showing pencil will erase after everything dries. I'm just going back and kind of touching up some of these shapes. Everything should be covered. There shouldn't be any background color showing through. So this needs to dry before we can add more detail work to our snow people. I'm going to take this gray on my palette and I'm going to go in and add some texture in my ground area. I'm going to start right here and just do kind of thick paint strokes going kind of left and right. So we have the little bit of snow kind of piling up on the bottom, but then going to the left or going towards the right to kind of create some shadow in our snow. And I'm going to do the same thing on the left, so a little bit of snow kind of piling up and overlapping this snowman on the left. And then kind of left and right texture. So we already have a layer of gray, so this just kind of adds to that layer. And then we can bring this up a little bit towards the background, but I want to leave that kind of blended, faded look that's far in the distance, bring a little bit up towards the pine trees. So this is a little bit of snow texture on the left and right edges of the canvas. A little bit towards the bottom center, but really nothing in the middle and towards the horizon line. So it kind of goes up in the middle, but then stops. Variety of gray is really created by loading the brush in different amounts of gray. You can see my palette has this kind of like swirled variation of darker grays, lighter grays, and that's just based on how I'm loading the brush in different amounts. I'm going to rinse my 4-round brush and do snowflakes next. So our sky is dry, and so we can paint these snowflakes while we're waiting for our snowballs to dry. And our trees aren't, well, at least my trees aren't dry yet. So we can do snowflakes and then do our snow on the trees. So these are just going to be really simple snowflakes. Use a 4-round brush. If you want to, you can even use a white paint pen for this. But I'll do a line and then an X. So that'll give you 6 lines for your snowflake, and then I'll go in and decorate each of the lines. So you can do something like this. I'm just making like little diagonal lines that go out. and then like a little kind of oval on the very end of the point. So this is one way you can do the snowflake, and you'll want to just kind of repeat that for other snowflakes in the sky, and you can make them all the same if you want, or you can make them all different. So some of these, maybe they're just snow dots. I'll do another snowflake, another large one over here on the right. You just want to make sure, especially if you're going to do the steam from the mugs, that you don't put any large snowflakes right in the center. You could kind of do them in the center top part of the sky, but center lower part of the sky might get in the way if you want to do the heart steam decoration later on. Next, I'm going to show you how to do the snow on the trees. So you want to still use the number 4 round brush and titanium white. So let's start with the tree on the right. And I'm going to repeat the same kind of paint stroke branches, but I'm going to start on the bottom and work my way to the top. So when we initially painted the tree, we started on the top, worked our way to the bottom. We're doing the opposite. And I want to leave a little gap between each row of white branches. So I'm doing a set of branches, leaving green spacing in between, but also leaving some green still showing through the row that I'm painting as well. So you work your way from the bottom to the top, and that's how we can do our snow layer for the trees. I am going to repeat this for the tree on the left. So again, start on the bottom and then work your way to the top. So after doing all this, our snow people should be dry or mostly dry, and we are going to go ahead and add our next layer of highlighting to the snowballs. So I'm going to take a clean number 4 round brush, and actually if you're just doing white, you probably don't need to clean it because we just need white right now too. And I am going to apply my lighter color. So I'm going to start with the snowman on the right and add my lighter color towards the left. And so I'm going to outline the circle, and then I'm going to drag my paint strokes towards the right side of that circle, but I want to leave the far right side of each of the circles kind of shadowy. So I'm going to do it again to this circle, leaving just maybe a slither of dark gray still showing on the far left, dragging it and curved strokes towards the right, so it's shadowy on the right top circle. Right and white on the left. Drag your paint strokes in curved directions, but leave your right side kind of darker. I'm going to go back and kind of outline the far right edges. There's actually not a slither of dark gray showing on the far edge right here. It's all covered. For me, that gray layer was not dry all the way, so I have gray mixing with that, and I'm kind of using that to my advantage because I'm allowing that gray to kind of mix to make a medium gray in the middle, but I'm leaving the far right side that darker gray because we want shadowy on the right and bright on the left. But the opposite is happening to the snowman on the left. So we want our brighter color to be right here, and then our darker color to be far on the left. So outline this far right part. Drag your curved paint strokes towards the left. Leave it darker and shadowy towards the left. So I'm adding a little bit of white over that, but it's not as solid as the far right side. So I'm not covering all of that dark. So I'm going back, adding another bright layer over here on the right. It doesn't have to be a smooth, perfect gradient blend. It could be expressive where you have choppy paint strokes. That's okay. And then right here, same thing, lighter on the right, leave it dark on the left. And the head, same thing. Outline brighter color on the right, kind of drag it in towards the left. You don't have to smooth blend it perfectly. I'm going to go back, add more light color on the far right. And do the same thing here. Brighter color, this time on the left edge. Another layer of white. And you might find after this dries, you can go back and add brighter layers of white, especially if your gray ended up blending a lot just now. You can wait for everything to dry and then you can go back with brighter white layers on your edges. I'm going to take this to the next level. You don't have to do this, but this is something a little advanced you can try if you need help with like maybe outlining or getting things to stand out a little bit better. I'm making a dark gray, so I mixed my phthalo blue with black and white, so this is like a dark blue-gray color. And I'm very lightly, very loosely outlining the dark far edges of this. So outline on the far right and a little bit where that curve goes inwards on the snow people. So outline on the far left of this one, a little bit under and in the middle. And then I'm going to wipe and mix a little bit of white with that. So now I have this kind of like blue-gray, lighter medium blue-gray color. I'm just kind of lightly brushing that over. Again, this is optional. You don't have to add blue-gray into this or outline it if you don't want to. Oop, that's a little bit too bright than what I wanted. But it just gives it kind of like a bluish-gray shadowing on the far part where it's supposed to be darker and shadowy. Drag it in towards the middle. We don't have to perfectly blend it. This is a good stopping point if you want to take a break from your painting, or if you want to continue. I recommend using a hair dryer, blow dryer to dry everything before we can proceed. I'm going to dry everything, and after everything's dry, I'm going to get my eraser and I'm going to erase all my pencil lines. So that line down the middle erase that. Again, be very, very careful of any thicker areas of paint that didn't dry. As you're erasing this, you don't want to accidentally smudge something that didn't dry. So erasing any leftover drawing lines and that line down the middle, so there's no pencil lines next. And then I'm going to take pure white. This is titanium white, not mixed with anything. A clean number 4 round brush. And this should show up so bright right now because everything was dried. It's not a gray, it's pure white. And we're just going to add another layer of white on the far edge and kind of drag it in. And that's really going to brighten your snow people, your snowballs. So don't add too much white. You can, if you want to drag it in towards the middle, you can. Just don't add thick, opaque layers. You can kind of dry brush over that middle a little bit, or just add it on the far left. And it's opposite with the other snowman. It would be added on the far right. And I am repeating this for the other snowman. So you outline the edge, drag it in, those kind of curved directions to give it that sphere shape, but you don't have to perfectly blend it. It's fine. Just kind of drag it in, but don't bring too much brightness to where the shadowy part is, and drag that in. So now we have really bright layers, and we can start adding our accessories to both of the snow people next. Let's rinse the brush and let's get Mars Black. I'm going to start with the snowman on the right, and I'm going to paint his top hat first. So I'm not going to draw the hat, but if you feel more comfortable kind of sketching it out first, and that's the same with any of the accessories on the snowman, you're welcome to kind of sketch it out first lightly with a pencil. So I'm going to use my 4 round brush, load that into the black, and our hat is not going to be directly on the top of the head. It's actually going to go diagonally. And this is because this snowman is facing, it's more of like a 3/4 profile view, but he's facing to the left. So this hat's diagonally kind of going towards the right. So that cuts off just a little bit on the top of his head. And then we have the top part of the hat. So you kind of draw the shape. So that rectangle, it kind of goes inwards. So these lines kind of go diagonally inwards. These lines get curved at the top, and the top part is curved. It's solid black though. So top hat. This bottom part could just be a straight, thick line, or you can kind of make it where it's going kind of diagonally upwards. And this, I'm going to make it a little bit more curved at the top. Rinse the brush and then load your paint palette with the color that you're going to use for the hat. We're going to do a beanie on the snowman on the left. So I thought about doing like a light pink color, but I decided to go with red actually. So this is Cad Red Medium. And you can do purple. I thought about doing purple. I also thought about doing like an aqua color, but I didn't think it would do enough contrast against the blue sky. So we just went with red. And same thing. So it needs to go diagonally and it overlaps just a portion of the head. So like a thick line. And then your little half circle is also kind of going diagonally. So it's diagonally the opposite direction of the top hat. And then I'm going to do the scarf. So you can change the color of this if you want, but I'm just going to go with a red scarf to match the hat. And so these are fun. They just overlap that bottom part of the top circle and the top part of the middle circle. So it goes right over both of those. And it's just a thick line that goes curved down. And then these parts of the scarf that are kind of flying, just kind of drag my brush down and quickly let go. Gives it a little bit of like dry brush texture on the end. And you can make the other one kind of floating up. And then for the scarf on the right, I'm going to use Phthalo Blue. So I'm going to rinse my brush. Phthalo Blue should be dark enough to show up against this part of the sky, which is a lighter part of the sky. So it should show up. It definitely shows up over the snow color. So same thing. You just overlap the top or overlap the bottom part of the top part of the circle and top part of the middle circle where they meet. And then do your little flyaways. You just drag your brush down and then release the pressure quickly. It gives it that kind of dry brush end texture where it just kind of fades off into the sky or overlaps the sky. Then I'm going to rinse my brush and I'm going to do polka dots on our scarf, our red scarf. So my red's not dry all the way, but this should still be okay because I'm just doing white dots. I'm taking my brush and white paint and doing little dots. And then for the little tassels at the end of the scarf, I'm taking white and I'm just dragging little white lines with a lot of that red still showing. And then for the beanie, I'm going to take my white and I'm going to do little curved lines. So this is actually kind of blending with the red because the red isn't completely dry. And on each, I'm just kind of alternating, but see how they kind of change direction? So that creates the little simple knit texture on the bottom part of the beanie. I'm just going back over those lines again, but I left a red gap in between each of those lines. And then little fuzzy top part of the beanie. So I'm just taking white and dragging outwards to create a little circle fuzzy ball shape. And then I'm taking my white again and I'm dragging straight line, or they're not straight, curved line strokes on the main part of the hat. And then this line right here, we can outline that maybe with a darker red later to kind of get that to stand out. And then I'm going to rinse the brush and do like a basic checker pattern on the blue scarf. So load that into titanium white. And this is the same thing. This blue isn't completely dry, so this might end up kind of blending a little bit. So doing lines going this way and then lines going the opposite direction. If you want to change the design to be something else, you can. And then same thing for the flyaway parts of the scarf. And then the frill or the little tassels on the end, I'm going to do the same thing by taking that white and just kind of dragging that on the end. And then we can kind of add some fun highlighting to the top hat. So I'm going to loosely outline the inner edge just on the left part of that hat shape and on the bottom curved part of the hat shape. And then take the white and do a thicker line down the middle for the band of the hat. And when that white dries, I'll paint it red. Rinse the 4-round brush off and set it to the side, and I am going to next draw the mugs so that I have the placement figured out before I paint those in. So with the pencil, I'm going to start simply with 2 ovals. So these are the openings of the mugs, and see how close they are together? I want the mugs to be touching each other or just very, very close, and then a little U shape. There's actually going to be just a little slither of space between them. And then the little handle. So the handle on the right side ended up overlapping this snowman, but that's okay. And then you can do the arm. So see how far the arm starts? It doesn't start in the middle, it starts towards the shadowy part. And you can bend the arm and then have it attached to the mug. And then while you have the pencil, you can draw the face. So the nose, see how the nose starts towards the edge and a little bit in the middle. And if you want, you can change the direction of the nose. So you can have maybe the snow person or snow woman on the left. The nose might be, maybe that's going up at an angle. So they don't have to be an exact mirror image of each other. But the placement of the nose matters. It's not exactly in the center, it's more towards the edge. And then you can decide, so the eyes, same things. This eye is very, very close to the edge. This one is kind of more in the center. I keep changing the placement of the nose on this one. I'm going to try eyes first and then nose to see if that kind of helps. And then make sure you give yourself enough room below the nose for the mouth. I'm actually not going to draw the little circles for the mouth in, but you can if that helps. And now I'm going to paint this in. I'm going to paint the mugs in first. So I'm going to load my 4-round brush in with Mars Black. And that little opening at the top, that little oval, that gets painted in solid black. Rinse the brush, and I'm going to do just mug colors that match the color of the scarf. You're welcome to change the mugs to whatever color or pattern you want to do. And I'm going to do blue for this one. So very carefully outline that oval without dragging that black, and then do a U line shape and fill that in. And then do the handle. So very, very basic, very simple. And then repeat that for the other mug. So that one, I'm going to rinse the brush and do red. And then I'm going to load my paint palette with burnt umber, rinse my brush, and do the arms next. So just for fun, I'm going to mix a little bit of white into my brown. So I brown. I'm going to loosen that a little bit with some water. So I have the dark brown and the light brown I'm going to work with. So I'll use that light brown for highlighting. And then little stick that kind of goes out in a Y and overlaps the handle. So it looks like he's holding the mug. And then it kind of bends. And so same thing over here on the right, little Y lines. And if you want to make this look more branchy, you can. And then it extends or elbows down to create the branch. And then I'm going to take that lighter brown and just kind of brush it over on the top. Gives it a little bit of highlight. I am going to rinse my brush next and do the little red band on the snowman's hat. Assuming this is dry or mostly dry, so this gets painted red or whatever color you want to do. And then I'm going to load my paint palette with Cad Orange Hue. This is the only time orange shows up in this painting for the noses of the snowman. And so I didn't even rinse my brush. It's okay if a little red mixes with that orange. I'm going to just paint the triangle shape. If you notice that it's not giving you good coverage over the sky, you can add a little bit of white into it to help make that orange a little bit more opaque. I'll show you what I mean here in just a little bit. Let me paint this one. Same thing, kind of outline the shape and then fill it in. So I'm going to add a little bit of white to my brush and just go back over this, kind of drag that. We don't have to paint the entire thing, but just like in the area where we can see that the sky color through, a little bit of white just helps to give that a little bit more coverage. I am going to rinse the brush and load it into Mars Black. I'm going to do the eyes. So you can even do this with a toothpick, paint pen, because this is really small, fine detail work. I'm just doing one little black dot and the other one is right here. So a nice steady hand. Sometimes it helps to just hold your canvas into the angle that you need it to be at to really get in there. And then the mouth was a little tricky. It might help if you drew those in so you kind of know what direction you're going in, or just drew like a single line smiley face so you know where to put the dots. But this last dot that I did, I'm going to make the eye a little bit bigger right here. I'm going to actually erase that last dot later. I'll let it dry and then paint white over it. But we're going to do the same thing to this one. And then if you need to erase or redo anything, let it dry, and then you can just go back with white, cover it. So that one I'm just going to erase. And then speaking of white, what we can do, so after everything's dry or mostly dry, what you can do is do a little highlight on the eyes, especially. That gives your snow people a little extra sparkle and magic. So just one little dot on the far right side of the snow woman on the left and the far left side of the snowman on the right. Gives them that little highlight in their eyes. And then we don't need to forget the buttons, so we can do black. And these are going to be closer. They're not in the center. They have to be like closer to the edge. And it depends on the placement of the arms and mugs. So this one we can see two. We might actually see two right here as well. I am going to detail the mugs up next. So they are mostly dry right now. So I'm going to take a clean, rinsed 4-round brush and the white. I'm going to start by kind of not outlining this entire oval, like half the oval. Gives a highlight on the rim. And then these are tiny mugs, so it'd be really hard to add decorations on them, but this one's going to get stripes and this one's going to get polka dots. If you want to do a heart or snowflake, you can. And next I'm going to do the steam. So the steam needs to be dry brush. That means that we're going to load our paint. We're going to use white, but we're going to load our number 4 round brush in the white, but we're going to wipe the brush off with a towel. So I have a towel in my left hand and the paintbrush in my right, and so I'm going to load it, kind of test it out. It should be very light, kind of feathery color, see-through, because we wiped off the brush. It's dry brush. And we're just going to sketch very lightly 2 steam lines, and they meet and make a heart in the center. Go back over this and add more lines on each side of that initial steam line, and then around the heart so they kind of radiate outwards. This is not thick paint at all. You load your color with only a very, very small amount of paint to get this effect. Go back over it. So maybe some parts of the steam is a little brighter. Maybe some parts are a little bit dimmer. So these kind of radiating lines that go outwards from the heart, they're not as bright. They kind of fade away into the sky. And then I'm going to take my white, and this is not dry brush, this is thick layers of paint. I'm going to do little dots of snow on top of both of the carrot noses, and then a little bit of snow accumulation on the hat, a little bit on the beanie, just along the edges. You're just doing little bright dots with your white. I'm going to paint a little holly plant on the snowman on the right on his top hat. So I'm going to take my Hooker's Green Hue color and the 4 round brush, and then I'm going to do 2 leaves. So these are just little scalloped lines. And then the other leaf is going to go down. If you're doing this, you can change the direction of the leaves depending on how your hat turned out. If you want, you can take white and kind of outline some of the edges of that, so that kind of helps get it to stand out. Rinse the brush, and I'm going to do 3 little circles for berries. And so these are barely showing up because one is overlapping the red stripe, but the other 2 kind of show. The one is overlapping the green and the other one is overlapping the black. But later on when the red dries, we can paint little highlights on the berries. This next thing I'm going to do is an optional kind of advanced thing. I'm going to add some more layering onto our Snow Woman scarf and beanie on the left to kind of make her beanie look a little more fuzzy. So I'm taking red and mixing white, equal amounts red and white. It's going to give it a little bit of a pink color actually. And I'm going back over this with those lines that we did earlier. I'm doing another layer. So the lines on the bottom part of the knit hat and the top with that kind of medium red color, but not, I'm still leaving some red kind of showing through. I loaded my brush in just a little bit more white to lighten this up, and this is another kind of layer over that. So you're layering on, our first layer was that really dark layer, second medium, and third kind of a brighter layer, and that just kind of gives your hat a little bit more dimension. You can do kind of the same thing with the scarf. So I'm taking that lighter red color, that kind of pinkish color, and kind of dragging it on the right side of the scarf to just kind of highlight that part of the scarf a little bit. I don't want to go back over my polka dots, so I'm not covering the whole scarf, but I could always go back and redo some of the polka dots. I'm going to do one more layer, this time with pure white and just a little touch of white on some of those lines, mostly the lines that are towards the right side of the hat, and then a little bit on the scarf as well, just on the far right edge, and drag it in. I can redo the polka dots. Then I'm going to rinse my brush off completely and get pure white, since there was still a little bit of red on my brush. But I want to redo the fuzzy thing on the very, very top of the hat with just the white. So I'm going to take a little bit of white on the end of the bristle and just drag it outwards in a circular direction to add a very bright fuzzy layer to this part of the beanie. And I can do the same for the little tassels on the end of her scarf. Some final touch-ups for this painting. We can do more snowflakes if you want, so maybe there's some blank areas of the sky where you want to do some more fun decorative snowflakes. So I'm going to do a few more of those, as well as like just little dots. And off the camera, I did the little curved highlights for the berries of the snowman, and that is it. I also signed my name in the lower right. I used a white paint pen to sign my name for that. Hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching, and thanks for painting with me.